back in the late 1800s when we were placed on reservations. They were prison camps in the beginning. And this is a situation where we couldn't leave, we were not allowed to hunt. Our knives and guns were taken from us, and we were only allowed to eat whatever the American government gave to us, which was really no good food. The quality of the food was okay when it left places like Chicago and stuff like that, but once it got to some of these train stations between there and the reservation, a lot of these handlers would sell it, and then they would buy old food and put that in there instead, and these middlemen would make a lot of money. Yeah, so what we got on the reservation was bullshit food. Yeah, it was really no good. And we ended up getting all kinds of diseases like heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And then at the same time, our language and ceremonies were declared illegal by the United States. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Soon after that, our minds became weak. And these, as I said earlier, these are the four parts of the self. So with the four parts of the self being sick, we lost our connection to our sacred center. So we started to focus on communicating away from that. And then the priests came from the various churches, and they learned our ways and said that since our ways conflict with the Bible, that our ways are evil, that they come from Satan. They come from the devil. So in our weakened states, we slowly began to accept that. Now, another thing is that there were some Lakota people that didn't want to accept that. They wanted to hang on to the traditional Lakota Star Knowledge ways. And if they revolted, they were sent to a mental hospital in Canton, South Dakota, which was set up for all reluctant Indians in America that did not want to become Christianized. They were sent there. And these church priests also committed the medicine men, medicine women, holy men, holy women. They committed all of them to these mental asylums too. This way, the people would not go to them for help, that they would come to the churches. They wanted the Indian people to only go to the priests and not their traditional healers. So they sent the healers to this mental asylum to die. And if you are radical, you were sent there to die too. Yeah. So while this is happening, the priests are saying to the Indian people, if you believe our way, we will help your children. And so, it was a very, very dire straits time. And so a lot of Indians became Christians because of that. Like I said, we were weak-minded too at that point. And those who stuck it out, there were people who refused to accept Christianity, but they went to church anyway. What they were doing was they were putting up a candy store front. On the outside, they were acting like good little Christian Indians, but on the inside they weren't. They were Star Knowledge people. Yeah? They did this because they didn't want to get sent to that mental asylum to die. That's sad, isn't it? But that's part of what happened back then. And it's because of these people who maintained this knowledge in secret. Thanks to them, they passed it down, to certain people like me, and we still have this knowledge. And I have this show, and I'm sharing it with you. Because this regards the sacred center. And we all have that. Yeah, this is not a Lakota thing. This is a Ikje Oyate thing. Ikje Oyate means human being. When you live this way, as I said in the beginning, you communicate as a human, not as a Lakota, not as a German or a Japanese or an African. You communicate as a human. Yeah? That's really important to know. So, that's how it was back then. Yeah? Now remember I said that the priest said to the Indians, "We will help your children." So, they took the children away from the parents, sent them to boarding school hundreds of miles away, where these children were tortured to speak only English and learn the civilized Christian way. If they spoke about home, they were tortured. These schools didn't do background checks in those days. Yeah, the pay was really low, so they got really no good teachers in these schools. A lot of these teachers were sadistic. They got sexual pleasure from torturing people. And here, this is like summer holiday camp for them. And the same thing for perverts. A lot of perverts now had their pick of the litter, and they could get away with it. That's what happened. A lot of these children were murdered, they were killed, they were raped, they were molested. And there's a lot of unmarked graves near these schools. Not all these children are accounted for. So, those who made it through, what they learned was whatever they saw. Because a lot of these children never went back home. They were told by the priests that their families had died and that there was nobody there. And that broke their hearts. This is why some of these children, they were so sad they couldn't eat. And they ended up starving themselves to death. And those who made it through, like I said, they didn't really survive because they were not able to process all these emotional traumas that they experienced. They didn't know how, because the only adults that were around them were these unhealthy, abusive people, teachers, dorm matrons, cooks, janitors, priests. They were all unhealthy to them. That's all they knew. They learned how to become victims, and they learned how to become abusers to those who they considered weaker than themselves. So they didn't really survive. A lot of these children that made it through these schools, they had a lot of traumas that they didn't know how to deal with, because all they saw was abuse. That's what they learned. There was no adult healthy role models to emulate. And remember I said these children were told that their families were all dead. So they didn't go back during summer holiday. They just stayed at these schools and worked. So when they left these schools, they tried to live in mainstream America. Nobody accepted them. They would say, you're a heathen. You're a dirty Indian. So they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation. And when they went back to the reservation, to their people, they ran into more problems. Many, many times they were not even accepted by their own people, because their own people were saying, you're too white. You act like a white man. So they're caught in between. So a lot of them turned to alcohol to try to hide all of it, to try to forget everything. They turned to alcohol, and then later drugs. There were some who tried to make it. They married each other because they knew each other went through the same thing. And they didn't want their children to go through what they went through. So they didn't teach them the language. They didn't teach them the culture. Those children, the children of these first generation boarding school people, those children are today's elders. When they were born, they didn't learn the language. They didn't learn Lakota Star knowledge. They never got the opportunity to. When you look at an old person on the reservation today, they're not the connection to the ancient past. No, they were born in a Christian background at a time when the reservations were strongly Christian. So this is what happened. That's a native experience that a lot of people don't realize. This is what happened all over America and Canada too. So the next generation, they are sent to boarding school too. No choice. It's a little bit better, but they're still abused. They're still getting treated really no good. And so they grow up, have children, and they don't teach their children anything. What can they teach them? They don't know anything concerning their own language. This is why today most people cannot speak their own language, and what little cultural information they know is Christianized, meaning it's dualistic, and it's not the original ancient form. Okay, so the first generation of Indian kids that were sent to boarding school, since all around them were unhealthy adults who did nothing but abuse them, they didn't receive healthy parenting. They missed things that they should have learned about life. So they're lacking emotional development. So when they grow up, and those who make it through these boarding schools, and then they have children, those children are also lacking that emotional support, that emotional development, because the parents don't know how to do it. Yeah, all they knew and all they learned was abuse. All they experienced in these schools was abuse. So they have a hard time trying to be a healthy parent. So they do the best that they can. But the children still are not receiving the proper emotional development, the experiences that healthy children should receive from healthy parents. They're still missing that. And so when that second generation grows up, they know even less concerning healthy parenting. And so their children receive even less. And every time this happens, the next generation becomes more dualistic than the previous one. So let me try to say that again. The first generation boarding school kids, they didn't receive proper parenting skills. So when they have children, their children are not receiving healthy training that they should be receiving. They're receiving even less than their parents. Now that second generation, when they grow up, see, they know even less. So when they have children, those children are receiving even less, and it gets worse with each generation, which also means that the less healthy emotional development they receive, the more dualistic they become. So with each generation is more becoming emotionally underdeveloped, they're also becoming more dualistic. So today, it's a huge mess on the reservation. We're incredibly, as a whole, We're incredibly underdeveloped emotionally, and we are incredibly dualistic. We're quick to attack each other. We're quick to pull each other down. We're just like the rest of the civilized dualistic world. Notice I didn't say white man, because this is all over the world. It's not just among white countries. It's all over the world. Wherever there is a dualistic ideology, where one gender is considered less than and property of the other gender, you're going to have incredibly underdeveloped emotional people, which equals incredibly dualistic people. And that is unhealthy. So that started by the time of the late 1800s on the reservation. That experience that I talked about, I really think that's an important experience concerning, the boarding school and, all that stuff. And I think it's very important. And I know that people who were part of that experience, they will even deny that these things happened. It's such an interesting phenomena, yeah. How people are this way, who have been to these schools, and yet they, they will, honest to goodness, they're going to say, I was there. I was at that school. Nothing like that ever happened. You tell that guy to, quit making up all these lies, and they'll go that far, saying that. I witnessed this before. Not particularly, well, kind of in person. There was two experiences that I had in my life where I did see this, and it just freaked me out. Yeah, to tell you the truth, it just really freaked me out. And how did it go down? How did it happen? Let's see here. Okay, first one. There was this meeting on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. I don't know if these things still happen. There used to be what do you call it? A meeting, a series. It actually was like a group of meetings that used to happen in once a year, and it would always be on a different reservation every year, every summer. I think it was in June or July. I'm not too sure exactly of the date. And like I said, every year, a different tribe would host it. It has to be in the Ocheti Shakoni. Yeah, and for those of you that don't know what that is our original name. This is what we called ourselves. This is the 7 council fires, and this is what do you call it? This would be the dialects. Geez, for some reason I'm really slow here today. This would be the dialects. There's 7 main groups in our nation, and 4 of these groups speak the Dakota dialect, and 2 speak the Nakota dialect, and the remaining group speaks the Lakota dialect. Okay, and just to give you a fast explanation to what that is I like to use this simple expression, lila waste. That means really good. And this is the way Lakota people say it. Yeah, lila washte. Now, Dakota people, they're going to say dida washte. Do you see it? They substitute the what do you call it? They substitute the where Lakota people say L, they substitute that with a D. Yeah, so there's 4 groups in this Ocheti Shakui that speak this what do you call it? This Dakota dialect with the D's. Yeah, and then there's 2 groups that, as I said, that speak the Nakota dialect, and instead of saying Dida washte, they would say Dina washte. So it's very similar. Yeah, it's just that they they use an N every now and then. And there's a rule to that, but I don't want to make this into a language course here. But there is a reason why. Yeah, and of course the remaining the last 7th group is Lakota, and that's the group I come from. Yeah. So, okay. So this is called Ocheti Shakoi, and it's incorrectly known today as the Sioux Nation, or you see it in treaties as the Great Sioux Nation. Yeah, and I know some guys that come from different tribes, they really don't like that. Huh? What do you mean, the Great Sioux Nation? Yeah. One time I was in university in Utah, and it was Thanksgiving holiday, and here, I didn't have enough money to go back, but to me it didn't make sense, yeah, to go back for Thanksgiving because it's just a 4-day holiday, and so I just decided to stay. And well, there was this one priest who said that if anybody didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving, that they could go to his house and his family eat Thanksgiving with them. So a group of us went there, and Utah is a crap load of Navajos over there. So a whole wagon full of Navajos. Whole lot of chants. If you know the accent, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's a whole lot of them. Shoot. Anyway, one of them was a Navajo guy, and there was probably about 7 of us, and all Indians, yeah, different tribes. And this priest, thought it would be a cool idea, for us to introduce ourselves to his family and say what tribe we come from. So I said, yeah, my name is David Little Elk, and I come from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. And everybody was like, so you're a Sioux, huh? And everybody's making a big deal out of it. Oh, wow, there's a Sioux Indian here. And then this Navajo guy, he couldn't take that. Yeah, it's kind of inferiority complex here. And so when it came to his turn to introduce himself, he said, yeah, my name is, whatever, be gay from the Greater Navajo Nation. And people looked at him and were like, what do you mean greater? What's so great about you guys? Sheep? What's so great about that? They were teasing him, yeah, but he couldn't take it. He just couldn't take it that they were making a fuss out of the fact that I was a Sioux Indian, and he couldn't stand all that. He didn't like it that I was getting all the attention. And I always run into that whenever I'm among Indians who are from different tribes, but especially the Navajos. When I am among a large group of Navajo Indians, I always get this weird vibe. Yeah, as soon as they find out I'm Lakota, But with the girls, it's not really a problem, but it's the guys. Yeah, they seem to have this. I don't know. I don't know if it's an inferiority complex or what it is, but it's sure weird. Yeah. So anyway, it just made me laugh. And they don't like it when we copy their accent. Yeah. Shucks. Anyway, I got off track here. I apologize for that. Let me try to recover here. Um, okay. Uh, let's see here. What was I saying? What was I? Oh, I was talking about the dialects and oh yeah, this meeting that used to happen a long time ago. Okay, yeah, we're incorrectly known as the Sioux Nation, but we call ourselves um, Ocheti Shakowin. And back in the 90s, early 90s, or maybe it was even in the 80s too. I think it started in Pine Ridge Reservation, where they decided to have what they called a Lakota Dakota Nakota Summit meeting, and it was a week-long thing, and all people were invited, from anybody who's in the Ocheti Shakowin, to come to this meeting and discuss what they feel is important to the nation, yeah, for our nation. And so they would talk about things like how some Lakota medicine men sell their ceremonies to Europeans, and they won't even help their own people because they want to make money, things like that. The spiritual exploitation, Lakota language, revitalization, things like that. Whatever was important, or the Black Hills Treaty, or all kinds of stuff like this they would talk about. It was really interesting things, and they always spoke in their dialects. Yeah, everybody, well, mostly everybody, that could, because would speak in their dialect, and then they would translate for those who couldn't speak Lakota or Dakota or Nakota. So it was always a cool meeting, and I didn't go to that one because I didn't have a job that time, so I couldn't get down to Pine Ridge. That's about a 4.5-hour drive from where I live. And there's no hotels, there's no nice places to eat, and it's really rugged. Yeah, I don't know what the Oglala government does down there. Anyway, probably the same thing the Cheyenne River one does. Nothing. This meetings are for traditional people. Yeah, they were not geared for the tribal councils. I mean, they could come there, but this meeting was for the Ocheti Shakowin, and today's tribal councils are not traditional. Today's tribal councils are set up by Washington, D.C. to be puppet governments, and they receive a certain amount of money every year to run their tribe, and this is called the IRA government. It's IRA standing for Indian Reorganization Act. This was the act in America that gave us this government and other things that are really detrimental to our people. And what this is doing is it's keeping 90% of the people in extreme poverty, while only 10% get rich. Yeah, it's like these corrupt countries that you always read about, from where it's just the military that's mega rich and making the money, and everyone else is living in poverty. That's what reservations are like too. They're really corrupt. The governments are incredibly corrupt. They are the complete opposite of the governments that Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse and those people were in. Yeah, those governments, they didn't get paid. Yeah, they did things for the people because they loved the people. They wanted the people to live. But today's tribal governments, it seems like they want the people to die. This way they get more of the money. Do you see what I mean? So these Lakota Dakota Summit meetings were really good to go to because you could hear real leaders talking about how things used to be. Sometimes they would tell stories, sometimes they're funny, and it's really interesting, to hear, the relatives from the other tribes the other Lakota, Dakota, Nakota speaking tribes. It was always cool. Yeah, it was really nice. Well, anyway, in 1994, they see, as I said, every summer they move it to a different reservation or reserve. Sometimes it was in Canada. Yeah, it was. I wish that I could have went up there when it was up there, but for the time what that I was in South Dakota, it was mostly in America. Yeah, either in South Dakota or North Dakota or Minnesota, because that's basically where the three dialects are today. I mean, we're in Canada too, so I mean, in America is what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay, so it was on the Cheyenne River Sioux reservation, which was where I'm from. Well, which is where my mother's from. My father's from the Rosebud Sioux Reservation, as I said at the beginning of the show. And it was really cool. Yeah, they had all these guys getting up and, from Canada and, talking about what's going on there. And to hear the other dialects was just beautiful. Yeah, to sit there and listen to people speaking Nakota, and Dakota. It was just so cool to hear all these people. And they're all, it's just my nation. It really felt good, yeah. This is where I come from, and it was so nice, yeah. And then I'll start to think in my mind, gee, just imagine 1,000 years ago. I'll go back further. Just imagine 10,000 years ago and how the people were back then, yeah. And having these kind of meetings, because these kind of meetings, they happen once a year. Yeah, around July they would happen at Bear Butte is where they would assemble. They used to have the Sundance at Devil's Tower Mountain, Matotipila we call it, and then after that Sundance they go to Bear Butte, Mato Baha, and then they would have their government meeting there, and social things happen as well. Yeah, so. These meetings all used to happen all the time in ancient times. So, and I used to sit there when it was in Eagle Butte, and I would be thinking, back then what it was like, and it must have been really nice, yeah, to be among all those people in ancient times. You know what I mean? Anyway, they were talking about Lakota exploitation, spirituality, ceremonial exploitation. That there were Lakota guys in California that were selling pipes for money and smoking marijuana in them. Hippies would buy them and smoke marijuana in these pipes that are made out of pipestone, which is a sacred stone for us because it contains the blood of the Dakota ancestors inside the stone. That's why it's kind of soft and it's pink. It's the only place in the world you find this rock. And it has... like I said, the blood of the Dakota ancestors. A lot of Dakotas were killed in this certain area because of during the time Grandmother Earth cleansed herself to rebalance nature. Yeah, and a lot of Dakota people died in this certain area, and their flesh and blood merged with this rock, and that they call it Catlinite. Yeah. And so we use that to make our pipe bowls. And when the Lakota protocol is that when you're in the presence of a pipe, you're supposed to speak one of the three dialects to show respect to the ancestors that are in that stone. Because, see, in Lakota, the belief is that blood has something called tun. This is connected to your soul. So, in other words, this tun and the stone is connected to the souls of those that are in there. You see what I mean? That's why it's sacred. So that's why we're supposed to speak one of the three dialects when we're in its presence. Now, it doesn't even have to be a pipe bowl. It could be just a rock by itself, a pipestone rock. Yeah, that's sacred in itself. A lot of people have this incorrect teaching where they say, well, it's just a rock, But when you carve it into a pipe bowl and bless it through sage, then it's sacred. That's false. That's absolutely false. Because tomb is always alive. It's not dead. It's always alive. So even in an uncarved form, it's still sacred. Yeah. So this is the old teaching is that when you're in front of a pipe, you have to speak one of the three dialects. You're not supposed to speak English or German or Japanese. You're supposed to speak one of the three dialects. And they're not supposed to speak Navajo. You're not supposed to speak Mohawk or Cherokee or Anishinaabe or whatever. These are Dakota ancestors that are in there. So you have to speak one of the three dialects. This is a really old law that almost nobody follows today because of that experience I told you about the boarding school, the Christianization of the reservation and stuff like that. Because of that, nobody knows these rules anymore. Yeah, but I do. Yeah, and that's I will say these things on this show, and it's going to piss off a lot of Indians because they're not going to like it. You know, because this was only a Lakota, Dakota, Nakota thing, and now Indians all over the place have it, and so they're going to get mad. But I don't care. I'm sticking by the ancient stories. In the ancient stories, this is a Lakota, Dakota, Nakota thing that has to do with our outside identity. Okay? That's a cultural thing. It doesn't have a damn thing to do with us being a Seminole or a Delaware or a Apache or or whatever tribe. It has everything to do with being either Lakota or Dakota or Nakota. Only those three. That's a really strict rule. But nobody does that anymore. Nobody follows that. Remember what I said earlier, that I know that most Indians who listen to this show are going to disagree with me. I know that because they're dualistic. They're products of Christian brainwashing. And that's all they know. That's what they're used to. And where I come from is from the time period before that. Yeah, so what I'm saying is the really, really ancient way. And that's just the way it is. Yeah. So anyway, that's the old protocol, okay, concerning that. So in this Lakota Dakota Summit meeting on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation back in 1994, they were talking about this exploitation, that there were Lakota guys in San Francisco that were catering to the New Agers there, and they were selling fake Sundance ceremonies and these rich people in San Francisco. You know what they did. And I saw a picture of this. I know this is the truth. I did see this picture. They made a Sundance arena indoors. Yeah, they built it so that you do the Sundance inside where it's air conditioned. And the building is totally covered so you don't have to get worried about getting sunburned. And they have a sweat lodge that's totally built out of brick. That looks like a brick oven. So you just go inside and then you do your whatever and then come out, and they think that's actually they think that's a sauna. That's not a sweat lodge. Yeah? It's just incredibly ridiculous what New Agers are doing. And they have money, and so they'll pay for these things. So a lot of these Lakota guys that have the contacts, they go there and they cater to them and they sell, ridiculous ceremonies to these people, and they'll buy it. As long as it says Lakota or Native American, they don't even question if it's real or not. And this says something. I think I said that earlier. When you don't take the time to check something out, that means you don't even know yourself. Because when you establish peace in your life and live this Lakota Star Knowledge way, part of that process includes taking time to check yourself out, to come to peace with the difficulties from your past. That helps you to stay in the present moment. Yeah? So when somebody just says, reads something and it says, oh, this is an Indian thing, people just buy it and they don't even question if it's true or not. They just buy it. And that is that shows low self-esteem. That shows inferiority complexes. That shows emotional insecurity. This is dualism. And there's a lot of fake medicine men that cater to people like this. Somebody just wrote to me from Norway here. I was talking about, was he from Norway? Yeah, where he said he took some seminar courses from a guy named Jaime Estes Storm. And, it's allegedly, he learned the Indian way from this guy. And I just shook my head in disbelief, and I rolled my eyes, and this is a fake medicine man. This is not a real Indian. Yeah, this is the guy that's pretending to be Indian, but yet this guy from Norway didn't even question it. It's just that this guy said, he wrote all these books, does all these seminars, and charges an incredible amount of money for this, and and people don't even question it. They just go there and partake of it, and they think they're Indians after that. Do you see? The fact that they don't question it shows you that they don't even know themselves. I just explained that. Yeah, back the recording up if you didn't catch it. I explained to you how come people become this way, where they don't even know themselves. So whenever they see something or read something, they just believe it right away. So that's a problem. Yeah. So anyway, these people in California are this way. So these New Agers, and so there's Lakota guys that are, selling fake ceremonies over there and making a lot of money. Or they bring it back to the reservation on somebody's land and charge these New Agers, thousands of dollars. And so one weekend they make a crap load of money. And these New Agers are thinking they're Indian now. Yeah? It's just ridiculous, the kind of nonsense that goes on. So they were talking about this at this Dakota Summit meeting, and, about the ceremonies and how Lakota ceremonies, they don't belong in California. They don't belong in Germany. Yeah, they don't belong in Japan. Yeah, they don't belong in Russia. They belong in Lakota homeland. Yeah, Dakota, Nakota homelands. That's the only place where they belong, because that connects the outside identity to the earth. Yeah. Now, I'm going to make a comment on that a little bit later. And some of you that were really, really listening are probably thinking I'm contradicting myself. But no, I'm not. I'm going to come back to this again. Okay, don't worry. And like I said, this has to do with your outside external tribal identity. And during this summit meeting, there were some Navajos that came up from Arizona. And they said there was a guy from Pine Ridge. Oh, he's really not from Pine Ridge. He's from Rosebud, but he likes to say he's from Pine Ridge as if that meant anything better. It doesn't. Yeah, Pine Ridge is not the only place in the earth that is Lakota. We're all over the place. Yeah, we're not just in Pine Ridge. Just because they're the troublemakers, they get all the attention. People think that's the only Lakota place, but it isn't. Yeah. So anyway, this guy's name is Joe Chasing Horse, and he's not a medicine man. He's a fake. And his son, Nathan, was in that movie Dances with Wolves, and that guy's a fake medicine man today too. Yeah, these are really sleazy characters, and they've been back in the 1990s. They had a Sundance on the Navajo reservation, and the Navajos really didn't like that. And I agree with the Navajos. Yeah, they came up and to our summit meeting, and because they always welcome outside tribes to come too. Yeah, and so because this is our spirit of generosity. Yeah, this is Wawokia. This is one of our virtues. So when these Navajos wanted to come in and speak, we let them. So they came in and they talked about this Joe Chasing Horse and how he's
bringing a lot of white New Agers from Colorado, to I think it was in Chinle or someplace it's on the Navajo Nation, on their land, and he was doing the Sundance ceremony and charging these people several $1,000s each. So he made a lot of money. And the Navajos, the reason why they didn't like it is because they said the Lakota ceremony does not belong on their land, and they are 100% correct. It does not. It belongs only in Lakota territory. It does not belong where the Navajos are. It doesn't belong where the Mohawks are. It doesn't belong where the Cree are. It doesn't belong in California. It doesn't belong in Germany, Japan, Ireland, England. It only belongs in Lakota homeland, because that has to do with external identity. Yeah. So, most of the people that were there were in total agreement with this, what's his name, with these Navajos. Yeah. We were in total agreement with him and they said if he does it again, we're gonna bulldoze it down. And the Lakota guy said, yeah, do that. Just knock everything down, because it doesn't belong down there. So just, burn up the trees and do what you have to do, because it doesn't belong there. This Joe Chasing Horse is breaking Lakota law, traditional law. So, and sure enough, it happened. Yeah, the following year, he did another Sundance, and the Navajos went there with their construction tractors, and they knocked the whole thing down. And they told him to get the hell out of there. I agree with that 100%. That ceremony does not belong there. Yeah, so this is what they were talking about. Out of the blue, a lady from the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation by the last name LeBeau, which is French, she stood up. It basically interrupted these men speaking. She interrupted, and she stood up and she said, we have to let go of the old ways. These ceremonies don't mean anything anymore. They kept us in darkness for all these years. We have to turn toward Jesus Christ and accept Him as our Lord and Savior, and only then will we be a proud nation. We cannot do anything without Jesus. Without Jesus, we are nothing. This lady is the elder, and she sat down. And people were just quiet, yeah. And in our tradition, when somebody does this, you just let them be, yeah. You let them be. And then you say, you thank them for, saying their opinion, and that you respect it. Because in Lakota, and actually all over the world, respect does not mean obey. And a lot of people think it does, but it doesn't. Respect does not mean you have to do what that person says. That's not respect. That's oppression. Yeah? Respect is you let others say what they want. And you can agree, you can disagree, or you can agree. It doesn't matter. And if you disagree, you just let them be. You don't start a fight. Because, if one of you is wrong and then you start a fight, then that's pushing away the opportunity for the wrong one to realize on his or her own the truth. So arguing eliminates that. So you just let them be. And just pray that one day, somehow, they will learn what really is true. This lady is a product of the boarding school. She is totally brainwashed. This was an elder, a Lakota elder, that said this. That said that we have to throw away the ceremonies. And she said that we have to accept Jesus, and that we can't do anything unless we have Jesus in our lives. This is what she said. So all the traditional people there, they didn't say anything. The speaker got up and he said, he thanked her, for talking, and that he appreciated that she took time to come here and listen and say her thing, and and that's basically all he said. And then the meeting continued. That's the first time I witnessed, an elder totally showing the brainwash, the Christianized brainwashing that I talked about. There was another one too. This one involved my mentor, Albert Whitehat. May he rest in peace. I say his name with all respect. He's passed on a couple years ago, a little over a year ago, and he's a great man. And I learned a lot of things about being a spiritual person and a teacher from him. And so anything I say about Albert, I say in utmost respect and admiration for this wonderful human being, that came to this earth and blessed us and helped some of us teachers to do what we do. Yeah, he really is the foundation stone for a lot of us Lakota teachers. So anything I say concerning him is going to be the truth, and it's going to be out of admiration and respect. Yeah. He was on a TV show in South Dakota. It was a call-in show. They were talking about the boarding school experience and what happened and stuff like that. And you heard me talk about that in the intro. Yes, I don't have to repeat that. But he was talking about his experiences of getting, physically abused by the priests, and also some of his friends he knew they were old men now, but even as old men, they were so scared of the priests because one of them molested this guy. The priest is dead now, but these men were in their 70s, and even in the 70s, this old man was still going through post-traumatic stress disorder from that. And so they were talking about that. He finally was able to work up the courage to talk about, not Albert, another man, was talking about this. And Albert, and it was a really good panel, and they were talking about this is the reason why the language is dying. But now, we have to start learning it. He said, we can't blame the churches anymore. Yeah, because now we're teaching it, now we have to learn it. The students, the people have to learn the language now. It's up to them. It's not against the law anymore. Then out of the blue, a phone call came through. Like I said, this was a live show, and it was a kind of like it was an interview, but people could call in. And this lady called in, and she said, I am the same age as Albert, and I went to that school too. And I can tell you with my hand on the Bible that none of what Albert said ever happened. Why are these men telling all these lies? You get them off this show right now. All they're doing is spreading lies. None of that ever happened. And as she was saying this, you could see Albert and the other people were kind of smiling. And it's like, here it is. Here's a brainwashed victim. Yeah? And Albert said, out of all these things that happen, there's always going to be a favorite one. Yeah, the nuns will always have a favorite one. And that one they keep to themselves and, give them candy and, because they're doing something to them, or that they're making that Indian girl do something to them, if you catch my drift. And she went into denial. And so she's saying that never happened. But, you have all these witnesses that are saying it did. I was talking about, some experiences that I had where elders got up and were saying that we need to stop, the traditional way of living and give ourselves to Jesus, and that only through Jesus will we ever become anything worth it. Excuse me. And for me, it was just shocking, because when back in the 1990s, I was a much younger guy, and I was trying to, learn as much as I could, from our culture, our ceremonies, and our spirituality, our language, and here these old people were getting up and basically telling, hey, stop speaking Lakota, stop doing the ceremonies. That's what they were literally saying. And it's so unbelievable, to see a brainwashed person and how they communicate. It just freaked the hell out of me. To see a grandma stand up and say that, we got to stop speaking Indian. We have to stop doing Indian things. We have to turn our lives to Jesus, stuff like that. And oh my goodness. Yeah, that's the elders. Not all of them are that way, but a lot of them are. And usually, the ones that are, they don't say anything. Yeah, and because they've been humiliated. Yeah, they've been programmed to feel ashamed to be Indian. So it's it's something they still have to deal with, even though they're most of them are dying now, and they still have not faced that trauma. And as I said, when they had children, those children feel the effects of that, and these people, they never received healthy parenting, so they don't, they didn't really know how to be healthy parents. They didn't develop emotionally, so when they grew up and had children, they're still emotionally underdeveloped, and their children become even in a worse situation, and every generation that comes after is, more unhealthier than the previous one. And like I said, this is what I really want to be known, because a lot of people, you see things, everybody's world seems to be Facebook today. And there's a lot of things on there that are really incorrect when it comes to Lakota traditions. And usually people just are making it up as they go along. And a lot of times people will say, well, my grandma, I was raised by my grandma, and my grandma taught me what respect is, and so you better shut the fuck up, because if you don't, you're going to have to deal with me, and I'm going to kick your ass. And I'm like saying, wait a minute. If your grandma taught you that, then that means your grandma didn't know what respect is either. If what you're saying is really true, then, then your grandma doesn't know what respect is either. And that really pisses Indians off. They don't really know what respect means. They think respect means that you have to do what they say. And if you disagree with them, then they tell you they're going to kick your ass. What is that? That's duality. That's not the Lakota way. That's not any tribal way. Yeah, that's a man-made way to oppress others. So you see, the evidence is really strong. You look in Facebook and look in any Lakota group or Lakota person who's posting a lot of stuff on their timeline, and they have it open to the public, and you can see a lot of things. People will say, yeah, my grandma this, my grandma that. When I know some of these people, and I know for a 100% fact that these people did not grow up with their grandmothers. I know this because I come from the same town. There was a young girl, she's probably about in her either upper 20s, mostly likely her upper 20s. And I knew this girl. She was a little tiny girl. And I knew her when she became a teenager. She didn't live with her grandmother. And this girl was huffing. She was smoking marijuana. She was, because one of their cousins in that family, I won't say the name, but that guy was kind of off to begin with. But man, he huffed all the time. He always had a dazed look on his face. Yeah, and A lot of them are from that generation are like that. They were not raised by their grandparents. They weren't even raised at all. Their own parents were getting drunk and smoking marijuana. They didn't even raise their children. They just, fed them when they felt like it, and whenever they saw rummage clothes, they got it for their kids, and basically said, "Go on now, get out of here." That was their kind of parenting. So I think a lot of times when you hear these, today now these kids are like in their upper 20s, early 30s. So when you see them read their posts on their Facebook pages, I think what you're seeing is what they wish, but they don't know what it is. So they just make it up. So they don't know what respect is. They just what they write down what they think it is, and they say if you disagree, then you're wrong. See, there is a duality. This is the kind of snotty kids that grow up to be snotty adults. This is what happens when proper parenting doesn't happen. Yeah? Loving your children is not enough. You have to be a parent. That doesn't mean just love. That also means saying no. Yeah? That means lots of things. It means it has to teach your children how to stand on their own 2 feet, because if they don't, they're going to depend on you for everything. Yeah? So, this is just, showing you that people, I think, they're out to deceive others, and they're deceiving themselves in the process. They probably deceive themselves first, because reality begins within.